Hey friends, thanks for being patient with me. So today, based on the title, um, we're going to be talking about identity. And I will just share up front that I think one of the main reasons why a lot of pharmacists feel stuck or stagnant or unable to kind of get out of the rut of just waking up in the morning, going to work, coming home, going to bed, and doing it all over again. I think that a part of that comes from the way that we perceive our identity. And one of the reasons that I put identity in quotation marks when I talked about the title of this video or what we were going to discuss today is because I don't necessarily think that um, considering our identity to be that of a pharmacist is doing us any favors. And I'll explain a little bit more about that perspective as we continue talking. But before I do that, hi, Garen. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. If we haven't met before, it's nice to meet you here. I am a public health pharmacist by training, but most of my career as of late has been in the field of health content marketing and health communications. And I run a program called Health Professionals to Health Writers that helps healthcare providers learn how to replace a portion of their primary income through freelance health content writing. And every Wednesday, I come on live. Well, most Wednesdays, let's be honest. Most Wednesdays, I come on live. Hi, Zachary. And I talk about, sometimes I share really educational information about health content writing, like what it is, how you get into it, why it's so interesting, things that you might not know. Sometimes I talk more broadly about medical writing, and I always beat you all over the head with the fact that medical writing is not one single term. It's an umbrella term that has lots of different pieces that fall under it, and health content writing is one of those pieces, and here's why it's so great and better than all the others, and blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes on Wednesdays, we have more big picture conversations about our roles as pharmacists and some of the advantages and disadvantages that we have as pharmacists. And this is one of those conversations. As usual, it applies to other healthcare providers beyond pharmacists. This is not just a single set of pharmacy issues. To get back into the conversation, though, when I think about what I want my career to look like and what I want my life to look like and the impact that I want to leave, I don't think of myself as a pharmacist first. I don't think of myself as having the identity of a pharmacist, and I think that is beneficial. And I think that's something that more pharmacists could could find useful, especially if you are trying to discover new ways to branch out and still use the knowledge, the skills, the experience, and expertise that you have, but applied in different settings, in different environments, in different methods and mechanisms. And I think that when we have the identity of I am a pharmacist, this is who I am, rather than I'm a pharmacist, this is what I do, that we end up attaching the idea of pharmacists to who we are. And it's very difficult to break away from that. So I'll give an example. I can't use myself in pharmacy as an example because I've never thought of my identity as like that of a pharmacist. But I will use an example of something that I do associate to my identity. So a lot of you may know that I live right outside of Atlanta, but I'm originally from South Carolina. And I wasn't necessarily born in South Carolina, but I lived there from a young age, was raised there, lived there until I moved to Atlanta for college. And so because of that, I had and still have an emotional attachment to Columbia, South Carolina. So when I moved to Atlanta for college, like a lot of college students, I didn't change over my information. Like I didn't change over my driver's license. I didn't change my voter's registration. I didn't change all of those things to reflect that I was now a resident of Georgia, right? I had an emotional attachment to South Carolina. I am a South Carolinian. I have a tattoo that alludes to South Carolina. Like, it's real. I had that emotional attachment. Now, the thing is, a lot of college students do this, right? You're kind of in a transitional period. You're going back and forth. You might go back home during the summer, so it might not make sense to switch all that stuff over. Well, I stayed in Atlanta for all 4 years of college, and then I stayed in Atlanta for all 4 years of pharmacy school. Still didn't switch over my driver's license, my other things that I probably should have switched over. I'm not going to say it because we don't need any problems. But a lot of things that I should have switched over, I still didn't switch them over. Now we're 8 years in, right? It's been 8 years. I'm less of a resident of South Carolina now. As a pharmacist student, I live here in Atlanta. I have a home, I have an apartment, I have a car, I live here now. But all of my information still says, South Carolina. Okay. I graduate. I move out of Atlanta or away from Atlanta for residency and kind of bounce around. I come back home to Atlanta. I still haven't changed anything. Why? Because I have this emotional attachment to South Carolina. Not until I have a child do I say, okay, maybe I should start switching some of this out. I officially live here now. But it took probably over a decade for me to let go enough of that emotional attachment to South Carolina and decide to adapt to something else. And even though that is not a pharmacy specific example, that is exactly what I mean about the emotional attachments to things, the emotional attachments to parts of our identity that we create. And so if you are allowing your position or role as a pharmacist to inform your identity, then you have an emotional attachment to that identity. And when you get to a place where you're looking to branch out or break away or explore something new, it can be difficult to do that because you have that emotional attachment. So that is one of the key ways that I believe your identity as a pharmacist is holding you back from being able to pursue more. Related to that point, when you have that emotional attachment to something, it prevents you from being able to see all of the other things that you can be or see all of the other things that you can do. You feel like you can't be anything else or anyone else because you are already the definition of this thing. If I'm a pharmacist, well, how am I going to go work for, this newsroom? If I'm a pharmacist, how am I going to go, I don't know, do whatever else interesting that it sounds like interesting that you might want to do? It's difficult to see outside of what is immediately in front of you if you have created this box for yourself. And that is a part of what happens when you let being a pharmacist be a part of your identity. Is really you're putting yourself in a box that not only is it difficult for other people to see you in, but it's also difficult for you to see out of and see beyond. So when you remain attached to who you feel like you are or you were, it's more difficult to determine who you will become because you can't see all of the possibility that is outside of that box when you're stuck in it. It's hard to dream beyond that. It's hard to plan beyond that. It's hard to execute beyond that because you have such strong ties to the box that you have created and put yourself in and decided to stay in. So it's not just that the emotional attachment is a problem because, like, you don't need to be emotionally attached. Like, the emotion itself is not the issue. It is the complacency and the being tied down and the finding it difficult to be able to dream and think beyond that really becomes problematic, especially when you're in a position where you want to think and dream and plan beyond. So that's the second reason why identity is something that can be really tricky to navigate if you are considering being a pharmacist to be a part of your identity and a part of who you are. The last thing that I'll say is that, okay, so when I graduated, which would have been 2015, I was like, I am done with school. This is the end. There will be no more. I don't want any more. It's not going to happen. If I need more school, that path is not, it's just not for me. I'm done. So, and I know that there are, that I had lots of colleagues and friends and mentees and mentors who felt the same way. Like, this is it. I cannot, I have no desire to do more. And that's totally fine. Like, totally get it. Still, that still resonates with me to this day. But just because you have completed this step in your journey, right? You are a pharmacist or a nurse, a physical therapist, whatever kind of healthcare provider you are, just because you have reached that stage and you have decided that your formal academic journey has concluded for good, that doesn't mean that your learning journey has ended. That doesn't mean that there aren't still areas where you can grow and expand and evolve, and ways to do that that don't require you to, be back in school or be getting a degree. The thing is, when you perceive a part of your identity to be that of a pharmacist and you think that your official learning journey has ended, you really end up becoming hyper focused on your title. Like, before we officially become pharmacists, we are worried about the degrees, right? For some of us who chose to, do an undergraduate program, it's like, all right, got to get this undergraduate degree so I can go to pharmacy school. Then you get in pharmacy school and it's like, okay, got to get this pharmacy degree so I can be a pharmacist. Well, when that journey is ended and there are no more degrees to get, then it becomes all about the title, right? My identity is now a pharmacist, and now I'm going to hyper focus on what my title is and what my specific identity as a pharmacist is. But the thing is, when you hyper focus on that title rather than the skills and the expertise and the experience that are influencing that position and that role, then you miss the opportunity to continue your learning journey in ways that can really open you up to more. If I were only worried about getting from this pharmacist position to this pharmacist position, then I am not thinking about all of the other skills and experiences that I could be gaining that would help me not necessarily get from this pharmacist position to this pharmacist position, but that could help get me from this pharmacist position to all of these other opportunities and ideas out here that are more expansive and less traditional, and in some cases for you possibly more interesting than just another pharmacist position, right? If you're only looking at the title, then you end up getting stuck in this loop of pharmacist this, pharmacist that, pharmacist this, pharmacist that. And if you just want to practice pharmacy, then that's fine. So really, if you're that person, this conversation is not for you. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. This conversation is really for the person who is looking to break out of that cycle, right? You're looking to go beyond being a pharmacist, beyond that identity. But if you're only looking at what your title is and you're stuck in that loop, then it's going to be very difficult for you to focus more on the experiences and the skills that are going to help you break out of that loop. And a part of the reason why this loop is never ending is because you are centering your identity as a pharmacist in your career journey, when really a pharmacist is it's the role that you have. It describes what you do. It's not necessarily who you are. And when you start to understand that it's not who you are, you start to be able to break out of that loop and explore different opportunities that can help you become who you want to be. I spent that's the third point, by the way. That's the third way. Okay. That's the third way that your identity holds you back as a pharmacist. I spent some time at a retreat a couple of weeks ago, maybe less than 2 weeks ago. And during that time, I was reflecting with some colleagues, and we were talking a lot about something a colleague of ours often says, which is like, what got you here won't get you there. And it's basically a nod to the fact that we whatever it is, right? Whatever goal you have set to accomplish. So for us, it's our pharmacy journey, right? Like, that was a goal that we all set at some point in time. maybe some more recently than others, but we all set that goal at some point in time. And there were things that we had to do. There were boxes that we had to check in order to accomplish that goal. It was not an option, it was a requirement, it was a prerequisite, it was mandatory. And we had to check those boxes in order to accomplish this goal that we set for ourselves. But one thing that I've learned over my journey through entrepreneurship since 2016 is that that same rigid approach is not necessarily what sets you up for success in the future, depending on how you define success. So going back to this disclaimer, if your world is pharmacy and you want it to stay there, this is not for you. But if you are defining success at this point as being able to step out of the box that you might feel you're in right now, then what got you into the box is not going to get you out of the box. The rigid approach and the step-by-step and the gotta check these boxes that got you into the wonderful, blessed position of being able to be a pharmacist is not the same approach that is going to help you break out of that and figure out who else you can become and what else you can do. So we have to have a different way of moving in the world, a different way of learning, a different way of developing, a different way of seeing ourselves. Because a lot of it is not about limitations that other people put on us. I mean, to some degree, like that is a thing. So not to negate that completely, but it's not all about limitations that people put on us. Sometimes it's us putting the limitations on ourselves. In what ways are you limiting yourself? In what ways are you putting yourself in a box and keeping yourself in it? This is like a continuous learning process, a continuous place of reflection that I think we have to be. There are lots of people, lots of pharmacists who are doing really cool things. I love to see it. I learned so much about all the things that pharmacists can do just from hanging around LinkedIn and meeting different people. And a part of the reason why I love that, a part of the reason why I really enjoy listening to podcasts about people who start all different types of businesses, even if they have nothing to do with healthcare, is because sometimes it just requires that inspiration, right? Sometimes you just need like a spark. It's like, I've been in this box for so long that I can't even imagine what it's like to not be in here. I can't even guess what other people are doing outside of this box. So sometimes I need to hear from other people what they are doing, how they have thought about a particular problem. Like one of my favorite podcasts is How I Built This by Guy Raz. I some of those entrepreneurs and executives that are interviewed on that show, I'm like, I'm not even trying to be there, right? I'm not even trying to do what you're trying to do. But I always take something away from those conversations because sometimes it's just that spark. It's the tiniest spark that can lead to an idea that helps me develop something more meaningful or impactful in my business, or helps me think about a different way of doing things. So my suggestion to you, if any of this conversation has resonated with you today, is to find your own inspiration. Like, find something, some type of outlet or some type of input that helps you think beyond what you immediately recognize as possible. A suggestion, in case you're like, and where do I go for that? Right now, the How I Built This podcast, like that's my example of what I listen to, and it's completely not related to healthcare or pharmacy at all. It's just like broad, talks to all kind of people. But sometimes it can be helpful to hear from people who are similar to you in some way. And so my recommendation, if you are looking to hear like what are other pharmacists doing, how did they break out of kind of what they were in and get into something different, is to go to, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Health Writing for Health Professionals. And if you go to that channel and scroll all the way down, you'll see a playlist where I talk to former health professionals to health writer students. And they share about their experience in the program, but more importantly, they share about their background and where they started and why they decided to add this additional skill set to their already existing expertise. And I think those backstories in particular will really help you get a sense of that inspiration that I'm talking about, and give you a sense of confidence that if they can do it, right, then you can do it as well. So I will link that playlist in the comments as well. So if you're catching this on the replay, just check that link, check the comments for the link. But yeah, feel free to leave your top takeaways, or how you feel about your identity as a pharmacist or lack thereof, and how that's held you back or helped you in some way. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation, and I'll talk to y'all soon.